2,500 years ago, the prophet Daniel was shown the final era of human history. He saw the empires that would rise and fall, the acceleration of knowledge beyond control, the rebirth of Israel after centuries of exile, and the formation of a global system, strong, connected, yet divided. He also saw exactly how it all ends. 7 prophecies, written more than 25 centuries ago, are now converging within a single generation. This is what Daniel saw, and it is what most Christians have never been taught to recognize. Prophecy 1. The Prophetic Statue. The Timeline of Empires. More than 25 centuries ago, the prophet Daniel stood before the most powerful ruler on earth, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. The king had dreamed of a colossal statue that filled him with fear. A head of gold, a chest and arms of silver, a belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet partly of iron and partly of clay. None of Babylon's wise men could explain its meaning. But Daniel, guided by the Spirit of God, declared that the dream was not about one kingdom, but about the entire sequence of world empires that would shape human history. The head of gold, Daniel said, was Babylon itself, the glittering empire of power and splendor that ruled his age. After Babylon would arise another kingdom, inferior in glory, yet greater in reach, the empire of the Medes and Persians, symbolized by the chest of silver. Then would come a third, Greece, swift and disciplined, its armies led by a young conqueror named Alexander the Great. And after Greece, a fourth empire, strong as iron, Rome, relentless, crushing everything in its path. History has confirmed Daniel's prophecy with stunning precision. Babylon fell to Persia in 539 BC. Persia yielded to Greece 2 centuries later. Greece collapsed into the iron grip of Rome, whose legacy still shapes law, politics, and power to this day. Every stage of the statue unfolded exactly as Daniel said it would, each empire rising and falling at its appointed time. Yet the vision did not end with Rome. Daniel saw one final stage, the feet of iron mixed with clay, a world divided yet interconnected, strong in some parts but weak in others, a kingdom partly united, partly fractured. That is the world we live in now. Nations linked through global alliances, technology, and trade, yet constantly divided by ideology, culture, and power. Iron mixed with clay. Humanity bound together, yet unable to hold as one. The prophecy hasn't ended. It's entered its final phase. In the days of those divided kingdoms, Daniel said, a stone would be cut out, not by human hands, that would strike the statue at its feet, shatter every empire, and establish a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. If every empire Daniel named has already come and gone, exactly as he said, then we are living in the feet of the statue. And the stone is coming. The kingdom of God draws near. But the statue was only the beginning. That vision showed history's timeline from heaven's perspective. Orderly, measured, like metals stacked upon one another. Yet Daniel would soon receive another vision of those same kingdoms. This time, he would see them not as God saw them, but as they truly were. Not polished metals, but devouring beasts. Prophecy 2. The fourth beast, a global system. Rising centuries after Daniel interpreted the dream of the statue, he was given another vision, one darker and far more detailed. In the night, he saw 4 great beasts rising out of the sea, each different from the other. The first 3 represented the same empires he had already described: Babylon, Persia, and Greece. But the fourth was unlike anything before it. Daniel wrote that it was dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong, with great iron teeth, devouring and trampling the whole earth. This was no ordinary kingdom. It was not a single nation or empire. It was a system, a global power unlike anything the world had ever seen. It would dominate not only through conquest, but through control, political, economic, and spiritual. For thousands of years, such a system seemed impossible. No empire could rule every land or oversee every people. But in our generation, the foundation for that kind of power has emerged. For the first time in history, the world is connected through technology, finance, and global governance. Policies are shaped across borders, currencies are moving digital, and surveillance has reached levels once unimaginable. From financial systems that track transactions to technologies that monitor behavior, we are witnessing the rise of a global mechanism capable of shaping belief, behavior, and identity. Through international alliances, economic unions, and global institutions, power is being centralized on a scale that mirrors Daniel's vision. Nations remain sovereign in name, yet their economies, laws, and communications are increasingly tied into a single global network. Iron, strong and efficient, mixed with the clay of human weakness and division. Daniel said this final system would speak against the Most High and seek to change times and laws, a world order that exalts human authority above divine truth. And as its structure continues to take form, the question becomes unavoidable. If the system Daniel described is already assembling, how close are we to the moment when it fully emerges? The foundation of that empire is being built in plain sight, brick by digital brick, code by code. But Daniel was shown something else, something that would make such a system possible. Not just a change in governments, but a transformation in humanity itself. A shift in how fast we move, how far we reach, and how much we know. A generation marked by an explosion of knowledge that would reshape how humanity thinks, moves, and lives. That age has come, and it carries both wonder and warning. Prophecy 3. Knowledge shall increase. The explosion of understanding. In the final chapter of his book, Daniel received a command unlike any other. An angel said to him, "Shut up the words, and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." Daniel 12:4. For centuries, those words remained sealed and difficult to understand. What did it mean that people would run to and fro? How could knowledge suddenly increase? Daniel was not describing a slow rise in human wisdom, but a prophetic shift, a time when information itself would reshape civilization. When Daniel wrote those words, travel was slow and communication limited. Messages moved only as fast as the messenger, and entire libraries could be lost in a single moment. But the angel revealed that at the time of the end, everything would change. Movement would accelerate, communication would multiply, and knowledge would expand beyond anything the world had known. Today, that prophecy has become reality. We move across continents in hours. We communicate across the globe in seconds. Satellites, fiber optics, and wireless signals now carry the thoughts of billions. The world has become a network of instant connection. And knowledge, exactly as Daniel foresaw, has increased beyond measure. The phone in your pocket holds more information than ancient libraries. Artificial intelligence now writes, creates, and learns at speeds once unimaginable. Every search, every message, every interaction is recorded and stored in systems that never sleep. 25 centuries ago, no one could have imagined this world, but Daniel saw it. He called it the increase of knowledge. And we have crossed a threshold. Knowledge no longer simply serves humanity. It increasingly governs it. Algorithms decide. Systems learn. And the networks that connect the world are becoming the architecture of power Daniel warned would rise. This explosion of knowledge has not only enlightened the world, it has prepared it. What Daniel called the increase of knowledge, we call the digital age. A world driven by data, governed by algorithms, and bound together by invisible networks spanning the globe. This is not symbolic. It is literal, and it defines our generation. But while the world builds its digital Tower of Babel, prophecy's clock has begun to move again. Its focus does not rest on technology or global institutions, but on a small strip of land in the Middle East, the same land Daniel called your holy city, the same place where the prophetic countdown began. Prophecy 4, the restoration of Israel, the clock of prophecy, resets. Among all the revelations given to Daniel, none carried greater precision or greater weight than the prophecy of Israel's timeline. In Daniel 9:24-27, the angel Gabriel declared, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city. A divine schedule that would unveil the coming of the Messiah, the fall of Jerusalem, and the long desolation that would follow. It was a vision that tied heaven's clock to the destiny of one nation. Daniel foresaw that after the Anointed One was cut off, the city and the sanctuary would be destroyed. History confirmed it. In 70 AD, the Roman legions swept through Jerusalem, burned the temple, and scattered the Jewish people to the ends of the earth. For nearly 2 millennia they wandered, hunted, displaced, and despised. Empires rose and fell around them, yet Israel remained a people without a homeland, carrying an ancient promise in exile. Through crusades, inquisitions, and pogroms, they endured. Then came the darkest hour, the Holocaust. 6 million Jews perished under a regime that sought to erase their name from history. The world looked upon the ashes and thought prophecy had failed. But in that same year of despair, the words of Daniel began to stir again. On May 14, 1948, after nearly 2,000 years, the impossible happened. Israel was reborn in a single day. A nation resurrected from the dust, speaking the same language, standing on the same soil. And, just as prophecy declared, the nations trembled. War broke out instantly. 5 armies against a newborn state. Yet Israel survived. The God of Abraham still watched over his covenant people. 19 years later, in 1967, during the Six-Day War, Jerusalem returned to Jewish hands for the first time since Rome's destruction. The world saw geopolitics. Prophecy saw divine precision. The clock began to tick once more. Israel's restoration is the heartbeat of prophecy. Every global crisis, every alliance, every peace treaty circles that tiny strip of land. Every eye is turning to Jerusalem, just as Daniel said. The God who scattered has gathered, and the countdown has begun. Everything up to this point has happened. Empires rose and fell. Knowledge exploded. The global system assembled. Israel was restored. What comes next concerns how it ends. Before we look at the final 3 prophecies, if you're finding value in this message, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people discover this content and continue exploring biblical prophecy together. Prophecy 5. The Little Horn, the Rise of a Defiant Power. In Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts, each creature represented an empire that would rise and fall across the course of human history. But as he looked closer, something new emerged, something smaller, yet far more dangerous. I considered the horns, Daniel wrote, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, In this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Daniel 7:8. The prophet watched as 10 horns appeared, symbolizing a coalition of powers, a confederation of kingdoms that would dominate the world in the last days. But from within that alliance rose a single horn, distinct from the rest. It spoke great words against the Most High, and sought to change times and laws. Daniel 7:25. This was not merely a ruler or a nation. It was a system, a personality of power, defiant toward God and enthroned by human pride. For generations, interpreters tried to identify it: ancient emperors, medieval empires, political movements. Yet Daniel's words reach beyond any single age. He described a structure of authority that would rise from among existing powers, small at first, but growing to dominate them all. Its strength would not begin with war, but with persuasion, gaining power through peace, as later prophets echoed. Today, we see the groundwork for that system forming. The modern world is being conditioned for global unity under the banner of progress and peace. Governments surrender authority to international alliances. Moral absolutes dissolve into collective opinion. The boundaries between politics, economics, and religion blur into one universal ideology. A digital empire monitors behavior, regulates speech, and rewrites truth. And through that network, voices rise that exalt humanity above God, speaking great things with confidence and charm. This is the spirit Daniel saw, the spirit of the little horn, emerging long before its final manifestation. It is the idea that man can govern without God, legislate morality, and define truth through consensus. It is the ancient rebellion wearing a modern face. The little horn is not a myth, it is a warning. Its shadow stretches across every generation, but in ours, the silhouette grows sharper. The world is preparing for a leader or a system that will promise unity while demanding worship. And if the foundation is already being laid, how near must we be to the day when the voice Daniel heard finally speaks? Prophecy 6. The Unsealed Book. Prophecy awakens. When Daniel received his final vision, he sought to understand it. But the angel told him something he had not heard before. "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." Daniel 12:9-10. The message was clear. These revelations were not meant for Daniel's generation. The details of the visions, the symbols, the timelines, the mysteries would remain hidden until the appointed time when history itself would make them plain. For centuries, believers studied Daniel's words with reverence and wonder. But many things remained sealed. The meaning of the beasts, the 70 weeks, the rise and fall of empires, all awaited the light of fulfillment. But the seal is not closed anymore. The same history that once concealed these prophecies has now revealed them. The events Daniel foresaw are no longer distant shadows. They have taken form in our age. What was hidden from the scholars of old is now open to every generation that lives with eyes wide open. In our time, knowledge of prophecy has exploded. Teachers, historians, and ordinary believers across the world can now trace Daniel's timeline with stunning accuracy. Every empire he named has come and gone. The systems he described are forming again, and the very technologies that define our era, the same digital networks that connect the planet, have also opened the scriptures to every corner of the earth. For centuries, Daniel's visions were sealed, but now Their meaning is being revealed in real time. We are the first generation able to see the full picture, to watch prophecy, history, and technology converge into one unfolding revelation. The angel said that the wise shall understand. To understand is not merely to know, it is to discern the hour in which we live. The unsealing of Daniel's book is not a new revelation. It is the awakening of an old truth. The end was written long ago, and now the words of that ancient scroll echo again. The book has been unsealed, and prophecy has awakened. Prophecy 7. The final kingdom, the stone that ends all empires. At the end of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the same vision that revealed the golden statue of world empires, Daniel described one final and decisive event. After all human power had run its course, after every kingdom had risen and fallen, heaven itself would intervene. And in the days of those kings, Daniel declared, the God of heaven shall set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Daniel 2:44. This was not another empire added to the sequence. It was the end of the sequence itself. After the iron and clay, after the divided nations and fragile alliances, Daniel saw a stone, cut without hands, strike the statue at its feet. The blow did not chip the statue or weaken it gradually. In a single moment, the entire structure of human power collapsed. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay shattered together, reduced to dust, carried away by the wind. And the stone that struck the image did not remain small. It grew into a great mountain that filled the whole earth, replacing the kingdoms of men with something altogether different. That stone represents the kingdom of God, the return of Christ, the King of Kings, whose authority does not rise through conquest or consensus, but through divine right. He does not reform the systems of this world, he replaces them. Every empire in history has risen with confidence and fallen into memory. Every government, every institution, every ideology has promised permanence and delivered collapse. But Daniel's final prophecy declares that one kingdom alone will remain, eternal, incorruptible, and beyond the reach of time. We live in the shadow of that coming moment. The systems of this world grow strained and unstable. The alliances of nations crack beneath the weight of fear, debt, and division. The iron and clay of human unity cannot hold, no matter how tightly they are pressed together. Yet amid the unraveling, hope rises. Not a hope rooted in politics, technology, or human progress, but in a king whose throne cannot be shaken. Daniel's prophecy does not end in fear. It ends in victory. The same God who revealed the beginning of history has already written its conclusion. The kingdoms of this world will pass away, just as every empire before them has done, but his kingdom shall stand forever. What humanity builds will crumble. What God establishes will endure. The stone that strikes the statue is coming. The mountain that fills the earth will rise, and every eye shall see the King of Glory, descending not to annihilate humanity, but to restore it. This is the end Daniel saw, the end that marred Jacinx, a new beginning, a kingdom not made by human hands, but by the hand of God himself. And when that kingdom comes, prophecy will no longer be something we study. It will be the world we live in. Every prophecy Daniel recorded has led to this moment. What he saw in visions, we now see in our world. The iron and clay, the knowledge explosion. Israel was restored. The book is unsealed. All 7 prophecies, converging in our generation. But these prophecies were not written to frighten us. They were written to prepare us. History moves by God's plan. Daniel saw kingdoms fall, but he also saw a kingdom rise, one that will never end. The stone is coming. The mountain will fill the earth. Now, I want to hear from you. Which prophecy are we witnessing most clearly right now? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more biblical prophecy content and share this with someone who needs to hear it. The prophecies of Daniel aren't just history. They're unfolding today. Jesus warned us, when this happens, globally, it's too late. 4 signs Jesus gave about his return. What if I told you that Jesus didn't just promise he would return? He gave us 4 specific warning signs that would appear right before his arrival. And when the final sign begins to manifest, it becomes too late. And that brings us to the first sign that should be unmistakable to anyone paying attention. Sign 1. Global disasters like birth pangs. In Matthew 24, the disciples came to Jesus with a direct question. What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? They wanted clarity. They wanted specifics. And Jesus gave them a detailed, systematic answer. The first sign he described involves disasters happening around the world. Wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes. But here's what most people completely miss about this sign. These aren't death pangs, they're birth pangs. Listen to exactly what Jesus said in Matthew 24, verses 6 through 8. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. That phrase, beginning of sorrows, is crucial. In the original Greek, it literally means birth pangs. Jesus is using the analogy of a woman in labor to describe what the world will experience before his return. This isn't random imagery. It's a precise theological framework that changes everything about how we understand global chaos. Birth pangs have 3 distinct characteristics. First, they increase in frequency. Second, they increase in intensity. And third, they point to something wonderful being born despite the pain involved. Are we seeing this pattern today? Wars and rumors of wars are constantly in the headlines. Nation is rising against nation, not just in military conflict, but in economic warfare, cyber attacks, and international tensions that seem to be escalating by the month. Famines are affecting more people now than at any time in recorded history, despite our advanced agricultural technology. Earthquakes are being recorded with increasing frequency, and many scientists admit they don't fully understand why seismic activity seems to be intensifying in various places around the globe. But here's what Jesus tells us about our response to these events. See that you are not troubled. Why? Because these disasters aren't indicating that the world is ending in destruction. They're indicating that something new is being born. When a woman is in labor, the pain is intense. But everyone in the delivery room knows that pain is productive. It's not pointless suffering. It's the necessary process that brings new life into the world. Jesus is telling us that the global chaos we're witnessing isn't a random catastrophe. It's the productive pain that precedes the birth of his kingdom on earth. And here's where this gets even more profound. Birth pangs don't last forever. They increase in intensity until the moment of birth, and then the pain stops, and new life appears. Jesus is telling us that these global disasters will culminate in his return and the establishment of his reign on earth. This should completely change how we respond to bad news. Instead of being overwhelmed by reports of wars, natural disasters, and global crises, we should be looking up. Jesus said in Luke 21, verse 28, "When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Our redemption is drawing near. The birth pang analogy leads us directly to the second sign. And this one is happening not in the world, but inside the church itself. What Jesus predicted would happen to Christianity itself will explain why so many believers today feel like something has fundamentally shifted in the spiritual landscape. Sign 2. The Church in Crisis and Awakening. The second sign isn't happening somewhere else in the world. It's happening right inside the church. And this sign seems to contradict itself. Jesus described 3 things happening simultaneously that appear impossible. The church shrinking and growing at the same time, weaker and stronger, more hated and more effective. Jesus said in Matthew 24, verses 9 through 14, "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." 3 parts, all happening now. First, Christians will be hated by all nations, not casual mockery, systematic international hostility, making following Christ socially unacceptable and increasingly illegal. Christians fired from jobs, licenses revoked, businesses sued for biblical convictions. But here's the warfare. Christians aren't just persecuted. They're portrayed as the problem, the intolerant ones, the dangerous ones. Throughout history, persecuted Christians were seen as victims, generating sympathy and conversions. Now they're portrayed as villains, making persecution seem justified. This pressure exposes who's truly committed. Second, many will fall away. When following Christ becomes costly, people claiming to be believers walk away. Church attendance is collapsing in Western nations. In America alone, over 6,000 churches close every year. Denominations that once claimed millions now struggle to fill pews. But this is separating wheat from chaff, revealing genuine faith from Christian culture. When Christianity carried social advantage, many identified as Christians for reasons having nothing to do with following Jesus. Now that Christ costs something, those people are leaving. While painful, it's purifying the church. And those who remain are becoming more committed, more passionate, more bold. Third, the gospel preached to all nations. While the church shrinks and faces opposition, it achieves unprecedented success, reaching the world. Notice, Jesus didn't say a large, comfortable church would preach the gospel. He said it would happen during persecution and falling away. How? 3 reasons. Persecution purifies the message. No more watered-down gospel. Persecution authenticates the testimony. People notice those willing to suffer. Persecution activates desperation. Urgency replaces complacency. The last unreached people groups are finally being engaged. Jesus said once the gospel has been preached to all nations as a witness, then the end will come. Not converting everyone, giving everyone the opportunity to hear. But while the gospel spreads, Jesus warned that deception spreads too. False prophets will deceive many. Not obvious cult leaders, sophisticated deceivers using Christian language. Some promise human progress will solve everything. Others redefine the gospel. All religions lead to God. Good people go to heaven regardless of beliefs. They mix truth with lies, quote scripture, address real problems, but lead away from Christ toward human solutions. This is why Jesus emphasized endurance. He who endures to the end shall be saved. not earning salvation, demonstrating its reality through costly faithfulness. Genuine believers endure because they have something that can't be taken away: relationship with the living God. Here's how it works. Persecution removes fake Christians. Falling away purifies the church. False prophets test who loves truth. The result? A smaller but more powerful church reaching the world with undiluted gospel delivered by people willing to die for what they believe. Like refining gold, intense heat burns away impurities, leaving pure gold more valuable than the original ore. If you're feeling the pressure, watching people fall away, seeing the cost increase, you're experiencing exactly what Jesus said would happen. The question isn't whether these will intensify. Jesus guaranteed they would. The question is whether you'll endure to the end. But this church sign leads us directly to the third sign, centered on one specific city at the center of God's plan throughout history. Sign 3. Jerusalem's crisis and the abomination of desolation. Now we come to the sign that marks the absolute point of no return. Geographically specific, historically unprecedented. When this third sign appears, Jesus said the final countdown will have begun, and everything that follows will be the most intense period of suffering in human history. In Matthew 24, verses 15 through 22, Jesus said, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be." Notice Jesus' tone. He becomes urgent, almost frantic. Don't pack. Don't gather belongings. Just run for your lives. Why such extreme urgency? Because this sign marks the moment when time runs out. To understand what Jesus is referring to, we go back to the prophet Daniel, who described this event in stunning detail over 500 years before Jesus was born. Daniel saw a vision of a future ruler who would emerge on the world stage as a peacemaker and problem solver. This person, the Antichrist, the man of lawlessness, the beast, will make a 7-year covenant with Israel and many nations. For the first 3.5 years, he'll appear to be the greatest leader in human history. He'll solve international conflicts, bring peace to the Middle East, enable global prosperity, and allow the Jews to rebuild their temple. But at the midpoint of those 7 years, he'll reveal his true nature. Daniel 9, verse 27. "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate." The abomination of desolation. This leader enters the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, declares himself to be God, and demands worship from all humanity. Not metaphorical, literal person, literal place, literal blasphemy. 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 and 4. "Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." This prophecy requires 3 conditions that didn't exist for most of the last 2,000 years. First, the temple must exist. When Jesus spoke, the Second Temple stood. In 70 AD, the Romans destroyed it. For nearly 2,000 years, no temple. Today, preparations are being made. Second, Jerusalem must be under Jewish control. For 2,000 years, Gentile powers controlled it. Romans, Byzantines, Muslims, Crusaders, Ottomans, British. But in 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel regained control for the first time since 70 AD, a prophetic milestone. Third, a world leader with unprecedented influence. Someone trusted simultaneously by Israelis, Palestinians, Arab nations, European powers, and the United States. Throughout most of history, impossible. Today, global communication and interconnected economies make such influence possible for the first time. Here's what makes this so shocking. It won't appear evil when it happens. For 3.5 years, the Antichrist will be the most popular, successful, admired leader in human history. Israel's greatest protector becomes their greatest persecutor. The leader who enabled temple worship demands to be worshipped in the temple. The man who brought peace turns Jerusalem into the center of global conflict. He doesn't claim to be a god. He claims to be the God. Ultimate divine authority demanding worship from all humanity. And he does this in the most sacred space in Judaism, the Holy of Holies, the ultimate desecration. When this happens, Jesus said, "Run." Why such urgency? Because the abomination of desolation triggers what Jesus called Great Tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor ever shall be. Worse than every previous catastrophe combined. Worse than the flood. Worse than Sodom. Worse than any war, famine, plague, or natural disaster ever. And it will be global. Revelation 13, verse 7. The beast will be given power over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. Here's the timeline. The abomination marks the midpoint of the final 7 years. Once this occurs, exactly 3.5 years remain until Christ's return. Not approximately, exactly. When you see this sign, you'll know precisely how much time is left. The clock is counting down day by day. But here's what's sobering. By the time this sign appears, it will be too late for most people to change their eternal destiny. The decisions that determine where people spend eternity will have been made before the abomination occurs. This doesn't just mark the midpoint of tribulation. It marks the point where human history reaches its climax. Everything since the fall has been building toward this moment when the ultimate rebellion against God takes place in the ultimate sacred space. Satan's final desperate attempt to claim the worship that belongs to God alone. But there's one final sign that will be impossible to miss, because it will be visible to every person on earth simultaneously. Sign 4. God turns off the lights. The fourth sign Jesus gave us is cosmic in scope and will serve as the final warning that his return is imminent. This isn't a sign you have to interpret or debate about. It will be obvious to everyone on earth. Jesus said in Matthew 24, verses 29 through 31, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." Notice the sequence. First, all natural light sources stop working. The sun goes dark. The moon gives no light. The stars fall from the sky. Then Jesus appears in blazing glory that will be visible to everyone on earth simultaneously. This cosmic sign is described consistently throughout Scripture. The prophet Isaiah said, "The heavens will be rolled up like a scroll." The prophet Joel described the same darkening of the sun and moon. The book of Revelation gives additional details about this cosmic shaking. Even secular scientists acknowledge that such an event would be unlike anything in recorded history: the simultaneous failure of every natural light source. What science calls impossible, Scripture calls inevitable. But here's what's remarkable about this fourth sign. It serves a specific purpose. God turns off all natural light sources to prepare for the supernatural light of Christ's return. Think about it. If Jesus appeared in his glory while the sun was still shining, people might miss it or explain it away. But when all natural light disappears, and then Christ appears as the only source of light in the universe, there will be no mistaking what's happening. This is why Jesus said that when he returns, it will be as lightning that comes from the east and is visible to the west. Every eye will see him. There will be no debate about whether it's really Jesus or just someone claiming to be Jesus. Here's what this means for the timing of these signs. The cosmic darkening happens immediately after the tribulation of those days. This places the fourth sign at the very end of the tribulation period, just moments before Christ's actual return. When you see the sun, moon, and stars stop giving light, you'll know that Jesus is about to appear. At that point, it will be too late to prepare spiritually. The time for decision will be over. For those who have been watching and waiting, the darkening of the heavens will be the signal that their redemption has finally arrived. And this brings us to the lesson Jesus taught about recognizing the seasons. The fig tree. Lesson. After describing these four signs, Jesus gave his disciples a simple analogy to help them understand the timing. The lesson of the fig tree. In Matthew 24, verses 32 through 34, Jesus said, "Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away till all these things take place." This isn't a complicated symbolic prophecy. It's a straightforward lesson about recognizing seasons. Just as you can tell summer is approaching by watching how trees respond to seasonal changes, you can tell Jesus' return is approaching by watching how these four signs develop. The global disasters, the birth pangs, begin with subtle increases and gradually become obvious escalation. The church crisis begins with subtle compromise and gradually becomes obvious persecution and falling away. The situation in Jerusalem develops as political conditions change and preparations advance. The cosmic signs happen at the very end as the final warning. But here's what Jesus emphasizes. When you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. He's not talking about seeing one or two signs. He's talking about seeing all four signs in their developing stages. And that's exactly what we're witnessing today. We're seeing the beginning stages of all four signs Jesus described. Global disasters are increasing. The church is facing unprecedented pressure while simultaneously reaching the world with the gospel. Jerusalem is the center of international attention, and preparations are advancing. The cosmic signs are yet future, but the stage is being set for everything Jesus described. This should radically change how we're living right now. So what do we do with this information? How should understanding these four signs change how we live today? First, Jesus repeatedly warned us not to be deceived. In Matthew 24, he mentions deception more than any other danger. False Christs, false prophets, and false teachers will multiply as we get closer to the end. Our protection against deception is knowing what Jesus actually said about these signs and comparing everything we hear to Scripture. Second, Jesus told us not to be afraid. Yes, these are serious times, and yes, difficult days are ahead. But for those who belong to Christ, these signs aren't threats. They're promises that our redemption is drawing near. Third, Jesus emphasized the importance of endurance. He said, "But he who endures to the end shall be saved." This isn't about earning salvation through works. It's about demonstrating the reality of our salvation by remaining faithful even when following Christ becomes costly. Fourth, Jesus called us to active preparation. He didn't give us these signs so we could sit back passively and wait for Him to return. He gave them to us so we would recognize the urgency of the time and invest our lives in what matters eternally. The gospel must be preached to all nations before the end comes. People around us need to hear about Jesus while there's still time to respond. Our families, our friends, our co-workers, our communities, they need to understand what's coming and how to prepare. But here's the most important truth. While these signs indicate that difficult times are ahead, they also guarantee that Jesus is coming back. Every birth pang that shakes the world, every persecution that hits the church, every development in Jerusalem, every cosmic sign that appears, all of it points to the same glorious conclusion. King Jesus is returning to establish His kingdom on earth. The question isn't whether these things will happen. Jesus guaranteed they would. The question is whether you'll be ready when they do. If you've never surrendered your life to Jesus Christ, these signs should create urgency in your heart. The time for spiritual preparation is now, while His grace is still available, while His offer of salvation is still open. Don't wait until the abomination of desolation. Don't wait until the cosmic signs appear. By then, the window will have closed. If you're already a believer, these signs should ignite passion in your heart for the things that matter eternally. Time is short. Opportunities to make a difference for the kingdom are limited. The season of Christ's return is approaching. But this isn't cause for despair. It's cause for hope. For all of us, these signs should fill our hearts with hope. We're not watching the random collapse of civilization. We're watching the precise unfolding of God's plan to restore His creation and establish His reign of justice and peace. The birth pangs are real. The pain is real. But what's being born is glorious beyond imagination. The King is coming. The signs are appearing. The time is near. Are you ready? If this message has opened your eyes to the urgency of this hour, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, comment below. I am watching for Jesus' return. Let that declaration go on record. Second, like this video and subscribe to this channel. Every subscription helps us reach more people who need to understand the season we're living in. Third, share this with everyone in your life. Your family, your friends, your co-workers. They need to know what's coming while there's still time to prepare. And watch the video on your screen to see what the Bible reveals will happen during the final 7 years before Christ returns. The King is coming. The signs are appearing. The time is near. Don't be caught unprepared.